Let us begin. Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. Nice to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Ooh, do we have a show today? I was actually supposed to be, let me see, get myself on there for y'all. Howdy. I don't know why this won't move somewhere else, but so it is. Streaming a weird format, so I don't even know if it took the actual booked, the set live and it brought it over. Not really sure. Aloha. Welcome. So I had an interview today with the P Wizard, the Uropathy Wizard, as I call him. And it didn't happen. He actually had other guests that got crossed in the schedule. So through divine inspiration and that these shows just create themselves and a lot of divine directed focus comes in to the flow with it. So through that, we are about to explore some of the deepest core powering of our divinity and get into the science and both the contemporary latest science on the physiology of your body and as a supercomputer, and also the ancient science of the construct of these modern statistical science facts that are reflected through these ancient sciences of supposed civilization societies, people that were primitive. But I got to tell you, if they're primitive, I mean, you know, they that seems to be in conflict with so many things that have been revealed about, you know, the Chinese culture, the Indo-Asian culture. They are ancient cultures, and within them is ancient systems and sciences that, well, our modern day has a fraction of the awareness around, at least to the masses. So that's why we do this. We do this to build more awareness and educate humanity. And you know, my apologies. We haven't had a show in about 3 weeks, I think, on Sundays, and that's because I'm working on the film part 2 of this film here. If you haven't seen it yet, released the movie part 1. Part 2, I'm working on to be, fingers crossed, ready 11/11/22. So I have been just cranking on that and utilizing my Sundays. So my apologies to you all, and still kept the Monday shows going. But even more so, just closing out the programs where we had a bunch of awesome new practitioners that are out in the world. They will be on the practitioner page. Beautiful reflections, amazing individuals that have come through and carried the torch for not only being able to practice on themselves, healing thyself, but also sharing and facilitating these sciences for you all, which was part of, I'm working on a montage and kind of an intro for the second film where we go through what a journey it's been just launching the first one, and a big part of that being the global censorship of it, and tying it all together, and also the profound global response from over 40 countries of people wanting to learn this work, wanting to know if they had access to this work somehow. It was a great pressure upon me to work through. So we go through kind of all of that, and we pick right up in Denmark and start our adventure through foreign lands, sharing the power of healing thyself. So, and still been doing the Monday shows, powerful shows lately. You can check those out on Rumble, eventually Brighteon. And it's all the stuff we can't go through on YouTube because of our parental control system. So, we have to cover it over there. But don't think we'll get flagged for this today. Who knows? They've actually been going through my shows and taking them down here on YouTube and telling me, oh, we know that you didn't know that this violated, and we've left it up for like a year and a half or 2 years, but we're going back through all your material. And we just want to let you know, that we're not going to give you a strike, but we're going to take your content down. So that has happened to, I think, 4 of the 5 shows. No, 4 or 5 shows so far. So nonetheless, looks like we're running well on this platform. Good. Just going to be a shorter show, probably about 30 minutes or so. In fact, I can mark that right now. Water levels. Okay. Can't do the hydrogen today. I didn't set it up. Looks like the water chambers is not full, so that's a bummer. But I'm going to roll with it because we got a lot to get into. What are we covering today? We're covering the sacred sciences of sexuality, the Tantra, and the sciences of the Tao. So we're going to go through a conglomerate of knowledge and gnosis that I've collected over the years from the esoteric and spiritual side, the celestial side, as well as the terrestrial, the earth-based side, and the telestial, so the outer realm, telestial, outside of this realm. So the quantum, the energetic, as well as the physiological, in the most sacred of powers. Sorry, this graphic is, wish it was more detailed. The most sacred of powers that we have that powers this inner physician, this biological computer. And that sacred power is also the most suppressed, oppressed, depressed, repressed power in our society, in our culture, globally, for a reason. And we're going to explore it all. And it can be, depicted through history, as we look at a deeper, more sacred and ancient process with the cultivation of these sacred powers from India to Asia, to the ancient cultures that deeply depict the elements of this ancient system of Tantra. And so we're going to go through kind of the Indo-Asian, the Hindu, and ancient, really Atlantic cultural knowledge and gnosis that's been passed down. And then we're going to go through the Taoist side and cover the spectrum of these two and look into the science that's modern day science that's depicted and reflected through the accuracy of these ancient sciences in your own body, your processes of your body today, how your electromagnetic field works. Hey, everybody joining us. Nice to have you with us. Thanks for being on the broadcast. So let's get into it. What is Tantra? Well, first of all, most people think of Tantra as sex in general, tantric sex. So Tantra is an ancient Indian practice that dates back over 5,000 plus years, guys. It's depicted in text even farther back than that. In Sanskrit, the word Tantra means woven together, okay? Or integrated, interwoven. People who practice Buddhist and Hindu or Taoist meditations also practice Tantra, and they usually, if you're in these practices, the personal individual practices we're going to address, because Tantra and Taoist sexual cultivation practices are not just for you to do with somebody else. They're designed individually to have individual practices, because your sexual energy, as well as the physical mechanics of your sexuality, your sexual center, is looked at as a machine, ultimately, at the core of the science behind these practices. And like a machine, if it's not, Bane, aloha, nice to have you with us. If it's not tended to like a machine, whether it's overused improperly, it gets worn and weathered, gets compromised, or if it's underused, if it's not used, and if it's not used, then it should be conditioned, because if it's not used and it sits stagnant, it also gets corrosion. So overuse, lack of use, or neglect both cause compromises to the machinery. So this practice overall brings together spirituality and sexuality and emphasizes the importance of intimacy during the sexual experience. Into me I see. Although Tantra is ultimately really associated with kind of sexuality, sexual pleasuring, and really are distortions of sexuality in especially the Western culture, it's really not. It's more about celebrating your body and feeling an accelerated, heightened sensitivity of awareness on all levels: physical, non-physical, energetic, and also connection to the breath. It's foundational, which are in the traditional practices that you're doing anyways when you're in these ancient sciences. It intertwines spirituality and sexuality with a state of mindfulness, and it encourages a more advanced sensual experience, if you will. It's so funny that even, and I should do this as well. Let's do this right now. Sacred pause, everybody. Let's bring some more peeps in here, huh? Let's do that. Let's see. Sacred pause. Digesting what I just shared. Copy link. Boom. Okay. And then we'll just do this. Pew, 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 pew. Pew, 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 pew. Almost there. Awesome. Boom. Alrighty. Good stuff. And so it is. All right, back on track. I just want to invite some more people in to talk about what we're talking about. It's important. The goal of Tantra really is to release, fits with the Sundays, not release like you think, release the indoctrinated, false homogenization around identity, around sexuality, around religious indoctrination, societal indoctrination, familial indoctrination, technological indoctrination. It's about releasing everything you identify with around this energy and existing without any of those constructs in the purity of what it is to embody the energy itself and cultivate it. It is ultimately a process. It's a ceremony. It brings presence. It's not about a goal-oriented direction. So that's another thing we release, the concept of a goal, of achieving something. We don't realize how much we're indoctrinated to, aloha Tiffany, we're indoctrinated to goal orientation on multiple fronts. You could say more of a hollow aspect to it would be for the masculine, the goal-directed orgasm. For the feminine, it might be more bonding, or even using sexuality to try to acquire the masculine, and the masculine, and gain some level of, again, power and competition. Why would this ever infect our most sacred space? Well, because we're deeply indoctrinated, and we've covered this a lot. The inversion of masculine and feminine naturally compromises the polarity aspects to it. So Tantra isn't just about sexual practice. This is a big myth, all right? It's a philosophy more than anything. It includes several different, ideologies, metaphysical, holistic truths. It includes breath work. It includes the yogic practices in general are applied actually between the two individuals. So where we do these practices, everything we talk about, this heightened Christos method, the sacred anointing that happens that we've talked about, where we bring the oxygen and we pressurize it, and we move this piezoelectric charge up the body and cause these sacred secretions. All of those things that one can do in sovereignty can be magnified when two electromagnetic circuits plug into each other and do the same processes. I'm keeping it like to the core of detailed graphic understanding. And ultimately, it's not to achieve a goal as much for a lower frequency release of energy as much as it is to carry, hold, build, generate, cultivate, interweave the energies to expand, activate, and generate together. So we're gonna dispel some false misteachings, just false truths that have come out, unfortunately, because the westernization of the concept of Tantra is the reason that we're going through a lot of these myths right now. One of them being that this misconception that tantric sex or Tantra involves this wild, uninhibited, crazy, freaky sexual experiences. And that's just not the totality of what it is in any way, shape, or form. In fact, you get a deep level of this powerful, passionate connection, but there is a deeper intelligence, a presence, a healing, an intention behind it that brings it to a higher frequency, that when you actually get to experience it, anything below that is animalistic. I use the more graphic phrase monkey fucking, but yeah, and humans are in the lower frequency, the carnal frequency, because what is our extremes? We have complete suppression, oppression of sexuality, where it's shut down, or we have the rebellion to that in our society, which is perversion. So there's no middle ground of sacred empowerment and truth and holistic truth around sexuality, and that's been done also by design. While tantric techniques can open you to new sensations, it is as much a mental practice as well as a spiritual one, as well as a physical one. Another misconception sometimes is that it's always necessary to have a partner. And that's another thing, is that it is as much a sovereign practice. Just like in the Taoist sexual practices, there are individual practices you do as a man or a woman, and they actually are practicing, exercising, conditioning, activating your sacred centers, preparing you for when you come into union to take it to a higher level of existence. In fact, many Tantra courses have nothing to do with, I'm going to use this phrase, genital contact. In fact, many of them are about building connectedness without any physical contact. In fact, some of the first exercises that we take practitioners through is sitting just in front of each other, staring, holding space, connecting. In fact, there's two forms of Tantra. There's white Tantra and there's red Tantra. And white Tantra is practiced by the Sikhs. And it's so magical. I've done several white Tantras while a Sikh and practicing to the core of the sciences with 3HO. And it's powerful. All the men line up on one side, all the women on the other side. And actually what they say is that the energy interweaves. So you have these rows of men and women. And I wish I would have brought a clip up for this. And they're directing energy, and the energy actually relays off the person next to you. So it makes this zigzag energetically. And that's why everyone sits in rows, and it again, interweaves the energy. And we'll be doing, literally interlocked hands behind the head, breath of fire, staring at each other for an hour. That's the Kriya. Or you're interlocking your hands behind their head and theirs behind yours, and you're holding and you're breathing together and you're doing this breath work and you're crying and releasing. And it's so powerful. And it has, again, nothing to do with penis and vagina. It's so funny how we reduce things in our own psyche to this very primal context, actually. It shows a great adolescence around all of us in our sexuality, which is reflective that we're all basically babies in adult bodies, because no one taught us that we needed to release all the memory and strama and this and the psychosis, the present perception of reality from the child state to the adult state. We don't have a rite of passage for that in our culture the same way. Tantra is also about bending into strenuous poses and positions, as I'm saying, and in opening the channels of the body to ultimately conjure and activate energy. So this is where we get this thing called Neo-Tantra. What does Neo means? It means new. It means contemporary. And so, unfortunately, and this has to do a lot with the westernization of Tantra and the pseudo-spiritual communities. And unfortunately, like I said, Tantra is very ancient. And so, and there's whole lineages of Egyptian Tantra. So you're seeing Tantra not just be in the Hindu culture. It actually carried out from pre-existing Egypt, Sumeria, Atlantis, Lemuria, a lot of these antediluvian civilizations that are coming to light, coming to awareness. We're practicing more advanced everything, medicine, as well as sexual connection. Neo-Tantra it's kind of this unorthodox element that kind of is an open door to really kind of anything being labeled as this. And that's, unfortunate, because this is something very ancient and it was passed down for specific reasons. It's not that things can't be evolved as we are evolving and mutating as beings, but if it strays from the holistic truth and it goes, unfortunately, into the infection of the perversion of sexuality as a polar rebellion to the oppression, this is where it gets all muddled. So a big thing is environment, both internally and externally, and a deeper calling to something different. It's again, if we look at the relationship statistics, especially in America, and then we look at the sexual distortions, the pornography, all of the perversions of sexuality that are ultimately reflections of a deeper distortion of ultimately, again, our greatest power. We're going to understand a lot more why there's been such a corruption to this, because it is such a threat, because it is the greatest power in your existence. It is depicted in many ancient books that this energy was coiled around the base of the pelvis. Long ago, when humans were first evolving here, this energy was put to slumber because humanity was not ready for the power of what this was. And part of your process individually around Tantra, around Taoist practices, is activating and unraveling that spiraled core of slumber to awaken and move up the spine, all holistically aligning with this sacred Christos method of the sacred anointing, of activating this piezoelectric supercomputer to bring the energy up and activate both the right and left hemispheres of the brain, activating the frontal cortex, which is where your higher function and psychic ability lies, and activating these sacred secretions that regenerate the body every 11 months instead of every 7 years. Pretty magical stuff. So, you may have heard of Tantra as full of obscenities, and it's something that you do. It's black magic, and kundalini's evil, and this is all bullshit. This is all part of the distortions in the Western culture to misrepresent something, and these movements like Neo-Tantra, to distort your most sacred and greatest power that activates your super psychic ability, which they don't want, because they want you to be in control and under control. And if you are empowered, it's much harder to control you. So I'm going to give you a basic logical decode. Okay, this piezoelectric charge, this electricity that moves up a fluid in your spine, this is all, again, this is all factual science. This, it's not the fluid that moves up the spine, it's the charge, because the fluid in your spine is hyperconductive. So if the kundalini energy that is in each one of us, It's part of your technology. If it was evil and wasn't supposed to be there, it wouldn't have been divinely created and integrated into your entire existence. In fact, it wouldn't be the source that's powering you. So this is where words get misconstrued, and it's sad for people actually trained in the Eastern sciences who deeply respect this work to see the distortions in the Western culture. So we do our best to try to bring reference for that and some reference of truth, holistic truth around it. Tantra, again, involves yoga, meditation, the chanting of mantras, reading sacred text, very advanced breath work exercises that you're doing. The actual aspect of Red Tantra is really only comes about once you've cultivated the practices within yourself to be in a place to actually even go into the depth and intensity of what that journey is. And this applies for the Taoist sexual practices as well, the sexual sciences of the Tao, which we're going to get into after. We're doing our Tantra decode, and then we'll do the other one. So, Tantra, again, being based in the Hindu and Buddhist traditions, it's not just in them. As I said, it was in many other antediluvian civilizations. There are records of this. In fact, they just got passed down to these newer civilizations that followed. It ultimately is based on union and unification. It's literally, again, what this word means. The literal translation of Tantra is loom, which is, again, to weave, right? It's, in and of itself, a return to divinity in physical form, which can be practiced, again, by yourself, or the most powerful is to come into that divinity shared in a circuit. Remember, you're an electromagnetic being, so you have an electromagnetic circuit. It also has been looked at as a combination of two words, tattva and mantra, tantra. So basically, it's embodying the cosmic principles of mystic sound, vibration, in union. Let me see, I'm just going through some of my notes. There became a big rise in the diversity of it, like the yogic sciences, because remember, the yogic sciences were pure. They were channeled by the rishis, and then they fractaled out to other individuals that began kind of fractionalizing the system, which to me is taking it apart. It's also why I'm not really drawn to the gene keys, because it is one component of human design. So it's looking at a portion of the system instead of the totality of the system. And I've always been intuitively a holistic practitioner to these sciences, learning them in their entirety. And so, over the years, Tantra drew elements from Vedic rituals. I mean, it kind of became a conglomerate. So what is the core of the system and the sciences? That's more, to me, has always been the focus. It just has had such a journey, the traditions of Tantra. It spread across India, it became popular, especially amongst the growing middle class. Hinduism was, remember, a caste-conscious society. This is, again, this caste system. There's many, lineages that say the caste system was actually passed down from a controlling civilization pre-us that has a caste system to it, a reptilian-based system. But the teachings of traditions, Tantra traditions, were very vibrant and exciting, and then also were deeply suppressed in the culture and the society. In fact, they were hidden and practiced underground a lot of the times. After they kind of died out in the 1100s, is like some portion of what it is to be. But you can see it depicted through so many ancient cultures. This ancient system that might to you seem, freaky, if you will, because it showed, people openly practicing these ancient systems. It's very much not. Again, this is the way that they depicted art and the expression of something that is deeply repressed for us. And to them, it was more open, honored, and respected as sacred, which could come off as whatever you're triggered by, because that's the whole thing with the perception of your eyeballs, is they pass through centers like the amygdala and the hippocampus. And so much of what you see goes through a mental screening of perception that you're indoctrinated to. Ooh, this is a tricky one. So, it's at its core, Tantra is a whole new way of being in sexual connection that allows you to access deeper levels of higher frequency energy and consciousness, awareness, and ultimately an authentic return to your divinity. It's very simple and at the same time very complex and profound. It's truly about celebrating the embodiment of the divinity of what you are, not just to the objectified physical vessel, but the divinity of your being. And through the process, there are waves of the release of shame, of guilt, of trauma, of blocks around sexuality, and not just blocks mentally, but physiological blocks that can cause an assortment of compromises. In fact, again, I just want to reiterate, even depicted in ancient art, it was always still acknowledged as an individual practice that could be practiced and cultivated with another. The transformational work with this is individually based, and that's why it's beautiful to have a reflection to transform with, but it is always about the self with a capital S. Now, are there other dimensional realms of orgasmic bliss that you naturally can reach when you are bringing intention, presence, healing into the sacred union of sexuality that most people connect in a lower physical form from? 100%. That's just a given. Hey, hello everybody. Seeing you in the chat room. Oh, it's a holistic approach overall, okay? And, in that weaving together of this holistic energy with the healing energy, it's a convergence of the masculine and feminine forces within both us as individuals, so your balancing of your masculine and feminine, and then this convergence and quadrupolarity of two people balanced in their masculine and feminine coming together, not to complete themselves, but to actually bring a quadrupolarity that activates this magnetic field that is built and cultivated together through working together. So much of our sexual experience, even if we think we are conscious lovers, is very one-sided. Even if it's you saying, I really want to pleasure this other person, you see, because I'm going to give you some very basic, simple constructs of the sexual sciences, or what were taught to me as the sexual divine laws of sexuality. Like, there are divine laws in life. With this sacred power, there are some divine laws. I'm going to give you a few. If the man releases before the woman, she takes his energy. If the woman releases before the man, he takes her energy. You understand? Because if one person is releasing that energy and the other one isn't, that energy transference then goes off into the other field. If the two individuals build their energy together, and that energy is conjured, generated, and releases together, it is merged and contained in the field, and they are both charged up. Okay, but that takes a lot more work. See, it's a lot more work to be able to sync your energetic build and climax and activation with another individual. Okay? Anyone can either work to pleasure someone else or themselves. It's another thing to sync your energies together. And because the feminine is regarded in both Tantra and the Tao as the more powerful sex energy, we're going to get more into that. These practices were not allowed for women to practice for a very long time, because the men were like, yo, we're just trying to balance the spread and keep up with y'all. You don't get to practice this. But seriously, it changed, it shifted, but at the same time, the reason that it was so is because the masculine has to build an energy and hold that energy while the feminine's energy builds. Okay? And we're going to go into the metaphors in the Tao once we get into it, but we're still on Tantra right now, of the Hindu culture, of the Eastern Indo-Asian culture. And so that is putting more pressure on the masculine to be able to maintain a field for the feminine to build and activate with her. And so there are different techniques that are taught to the masculine. Besides building your pelvic floor control, there's actually techniques of even how to activate the feminine in a way that's not going to overbuild yourself. And there are ancient lineages of systems where when we incorporate healing and we're integrating healing to our sexual experience, the healing activates a counter stimulus that pulls the masculine away from the sex center where the energy is building. It literally draws the electromagnetic charge into different centers in the body, into different awareness and perception for the masculine, because he is now receiving. So when you, as a woman, touch or activate some form of healing and release in the process, that actually puts the masculine into a state where he has to receive that, because you're doing something to him. You're actually penetrating him with touch. And that instantly shifts the polarity perspective from him over focusing on the fire, having to go into the water of receptivity. It's actually really smart, and it should make total sense to you guys. Let's see. Why is this frozen? What is happening? Again, this is another ancient piece of art, because it was depicted, and you can see how there's diagrams here, guys. And you can see how the diagrams to the energy centers and the energetic mechanics, as well as the physiological mechanics, because so much of what you're seeing here we can look at correlated to the physiology of the body and the nervous system. But nonetheless, you see he's depicted as a practitioner of himself, and that this is a self-practice that's always based in sovereignty. It's never about codependency at all. In fact, Tantra was always seen as a doorway, to a more transcendent truth. And once learned how to harness individually, one can harness and truly show up in partnership with somebody else to be able to do it. And that's really it. I mean, it's bringing, the highest level of intimacy to sexuality, to passion, to desire. It's bringing all that into alignment with the heart, the spirit, the mind, the intention, the breath. All these things we don't pay attention to when we're in intimacy. Honestly, think about it. In the West, were you really taught anything? What were you really even taught as you moved into your adolescent period of sexuality and having your first experiences? You were taught nothing. You had pop culture as a reference, right? Maybe pornography, I found my dad's porn collection at 12 years old. It was in beta, by the way. Anyone remember beta? And what a distorted introduction. Now, I was raised in the Eastern Sciences through my mom, so I had reference to Tantra and these deeper levels, but then instantly came in the interlude of the Western perversion infection, if you will. And, we've decoded the porn so much. It's besides being a loosh harvesting demonic facilitation process where it's sucking the life force from you, it's all so distorted in the way that they shoot the shots. They frame everything. They frame not people connecting. You're seeing close-up shots of genitals and breasts, and it's training men to naturally objectify the feminine. It's just what it does. So all of this, these are all things that you don't realize are indoctrinated into the consciousness, and you bring them into the bedroom. And ladies, do we even have to talk about the porno pound? I mean, I don't know any other reason that men would be conditioned to think the porno pound is something that the feminine likes. It doesn't even make sense to the physiology of the feminine, because the feminine's G-spot's only 3 inches in on the roof of the vaginal canal. So a aggressive, deep porno pounding does nothing for the feminine whatsoever. I'm going to give you an opposition. In the Taoist practices, there's something called the 9-pound thrust, and it's where it's a technique where the masculine goes 8 shallow thrusts, which is going to activate the G spot. And then the 9th one, he goes deep and he holds and draws his energy back, and then applies the 8 cycles again, going in deep, holding, drawing it up. See, there's a whole science and a technology that's experiential, by the way. It's not something that like, oh, try this, and then doesn't do anything. It actually produces results. And anything that's aligned with the divine will always produce results. It's always the dark stuff that comes off with a good pitch and doesn't produce results. Only provides distortion, chaos after, and no results. So when you bring these forces into balance and harmony, it sparks a interpersonal magic within oneself. that brings about healing, empowerment, transcendence, transformation, and an overall beauty and a remembrance of the divinity of what we are. So, not to mention that there's a level of intimacy and connectedness that happens, especially when you bring healing into your intimate relationships, because that healing stays with you after the experience is done. It's actually why I think so many couples fizzle out and get into weird shit, whether it be voyeuristic novelty stuff, or they open their relationships, or they cheat on each other, because even if they have a great connection overall and they love each other, on the intimacy side, it becomes monotonous for them, because in some part of them knows this is supposed to progressively go somewhere. This is supposed to be like expand. And because we don't have the gnosis, the knowledge, it cycles into stagnancy, really, or just monotony. And part of us is feeling intuitively for a deeper expansion and invocation into divine union, and again, misdirected, right? Misdirected, diverted from on purpose, to the indoctrination of this society to direct them away from cultivating their sacred power. I mean, if it wasn't the case, guys, this would have made it from the East and fully been integrated into our society, because we would have looked at the holistic truth and the science behind it, and it would have been a no-brainer. So, and in that, it's similar to the misdirection of you're supposed to get high. It's a natural thing to want to get high. You're just supposed to get high off of your breath and conjuring the breath in the body, activating the breath that activates your pharmacy to release these profoundly euphoric neurochemicals that make you feel so euphoric and high. So nobody taught us about the breath. And so we were directed externally into getting highs externally, whether it be from sugar, or you name it. Sugar's the first one, right? And then it builds from there. Alcohol, cannabis, mushroom, any of these externalized things are, by the way, just stimulating your own brain to give you those chemicals. It's not those things that even get you high, just so you know. Just like homeopathic medicine, arnica doesn't get rid of the swelling. It increases the swelling and your own body fixes you. So much of these deeper holistic truths of our divinity, we have no clue of. So let's look just a little bit into just the concept of what happens during a tantric session or tantric sex. It involves a wide array of practices, not all of which involve the same kind of penetration or physical stimulation that you associate to sexuality, just to be clear. Like I said, some of these exercises, you're just sitting in front of each other, breathing and penetrating each other's energy with the gaze. I don't know if you've ever done that. In White Tantra, one of the most powerful things that was unexpected for me was staring into because they partner us up. And if you don't bring a partner, you have a female across from you that you're working with. And so staring into somebody's eyes for an hour and breathing together, you just start crying. It starts, the penetrating gaze of looking into the divinity of another person starts bringing all the stuff out. And it's completely like, it's like the most natural, I think it's one of the most disorienting things, is you feel this natural, intuitive resonance, like it's built into the tech that, oh, this is happening now. This is supposed to happen. It's like a natural process, like going to the bathroom. And that's one of the things I think that is both comforting and also disorienting, and almost brings you to this place of, wait, why aren't we all connecting more like this? I mean, most of us don't stare in each other's eyes for very long when we have conversations, let alone in more intimate space. So, I can't say what a typical Tantra session is because of the distortion of Neo-Tantra in the West. But ultimately, it involves creating an environment, different aspects, exercises to cultivate intimacy and connectedness, whether it be this partner breath work together and the eye gazing, whether it be tantric massage, which is basically a lot of times just exploring erogenous zones and touch, working with, remember, by the way, none of us touch each other. Everyone knows that, right? So I'm not touching myself even right now. Okay. The electrons, in my atomic particles are pushing off the electrons in my atomic particles. So the only time humans actually have contact is in intimacy when the sperm goes into the egg, just so you know that. So again, the small little gnosis truths. You don't actually make contact with anyone ever. It's always your electrons pushing off of matter, right? That's what you're feeling, the electromagnetic push off. It feels like you're touching something. The electrons are pushing off each other, and your nerves and your fingers are feeling that, but there's no contact. So what you can do is when you draw your fingers very softly along the skin, it actually is taking the electrons and it's actually building electricity. The electrons are pushing off each other's charge, and you can feel it. And there's a whole sensitivity to it that most people have never really explored. Here's a good example. All of this is to really get comfortable in your body, get present in the body, and focus more on body awareness and your own movement and your body presence. And where are you in your body? Where are you in your psyche? You know, sometimes you'll be doing these exercises and you're being super mental and you're judging yourself. And so we look at that. So you explore. So much of it is so much more than, that's why we're doing the show, than what you think could be some, you know, freaky, why is this not so weird? Some freaky, exotic, sexual, debacle, if you will. It's actually, and you know, it's almost easier for you to shrug it off that way, isn't it? Than to go into all these things that probably sound somewhat alienating and unnerving, and maybe uncomfortable. Ooh, I don't know, could I do that? And all that shit has to be addressed, right? So, you know, sometimes during a tantric union, you're barely moving. And the focus is on the meditative, devotional aspect of presence. So I'm going to give you an example of a really challenging exercise that I'm cultivating some really powerful partnership workshops for Tantra and the Tao, and I'm writing a manual for an ancient form of neuromuscular work and I believe it is actually the holy grail of the true Hieros Gamos Christos connectedness of the Christ and Mary Magdalene. I believe it's actually, if they were in existence and real beings, which I believe they were, this to me, in everything I've uncovered, down to the cross, literally the cross and the symbol left, embodying Christ, was not him being mounted on this post. It was actually a directional key to unlock your body. See, your body is cross-lateral. We talk about it a lot with neuromuscular use therapy. So it has a crisscross structure to it. So when you go across the muscle fibers and along them, you unlock it. And when you unlock it, you cause the muscle fibers to drain all the memory and trauma, which also could be looked at as the sins in the water vessel for a baptism. So we do this work, and this is what, release is about. When we do this work, and we do a Western form of the work. It's more medical, and we're dealing with unlocking the trauma in the body, and it's very intense. And over a decade ago, there was, and being a tantric and Taoist practitioner, the bridge is crossed. The bridge is crossed in my psyche, and much was revealed to me. I'm not going to fully go totally into it because it's all going to be in this manual and a book that's being written about it that I'm very excited to share with the world. But in short, when you do this work, just like when you're doing the breath techniques that we talked about with this heightened breath pressurization and moving the piezoelectric charge up, that's the most powerful thing you can do at sovereign within oneself, in sovereignty. But you can also plug into somebody else's electromagnetic field and do that breath work, and it is magnified because two electromagnetic circuits are working together, plugged in. It creates a larger circuit. Okay, that's just the basis of, circuits, electromagnetism. That's how it works. So equally, when two people plug into each other and use the cross method to unlock each other while they're breathing together and their electromagnetic fields are plugged into each other, that activates both the release of the pain as you're working through each other's stuff, and it activates the pleasure. Guess what happens when, this is where it gets really interesting to see the science behind it. Well, when you stimulate pleasure, you stimulate one hemisphere of the brain. When you stimulate pain, you stimulate the other hemisphere of the brain. When you stimulate pain and pleasure simultaneously, you spark an electromagnetic arcing, which I believe is the true arc of the covenant, an arcing of the hemispheres of the brain. When you arc the hemispheres of the brain, it stimulates the frontal cortex, which is where your psychic ability lies. Powerful, powerful stuff. It's all factual neurokinetics. Look all this stuff up. It activates the pineal gland, the dimethyltryptamine, activates the pituitary to create these sacred secretions. Okay. Here's an interesting thing. Look this up too. Gate control theory. When you stimulate pleasure, it actually travels faster to the brain than pain does. Isn't that interesting? So this is where orgasmic birthing in ancient cultures, they started to look into the science of it. And this is where I actually started to see a lot of the scientific mechanics of physiology to these ancient practices. When you stimulate pleasure, it blocks the pain receptor gates, which is why the women would stimulate themselves during contractions. Instead of contracting, they would expand. The pain would be nullified because the pain receptor gates are being blocked by the pleasure. And the whole process of giving birth wasn't this violent process that's depicted in all of our pop culture as another deterrent for women to take on the sacred right of having children. Another way that it just seems like a giant big hassle, which is the perspective of so many women in the modern day contemporary world, especially the millennial generation. I'm not saying there's exceptions that haven't held to the true nature of what it is for us to embody our divinity in both masculine and feminine forms, but I see it rampant, and I see it constantly being supported with comedy routines and sitcoms and different shows where and it's sad. It's so sad to me. But nonetheless, it becomes a graceful dance and process that's less traumatic for the baby, less traumatic for the mother, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when we're releasing our trauma, we're rebirthing ourselves. So we can go in and just dig the trauma out, or we can actually cultivate and utilize the counter stimuli to activate this divine synthesis within the nervous system that doesn't just make it easier to release the pain, but actually does a whole other thing. It activates the brain and the neocortex and higher functioning of our psychic ability. Boom. Holistic truth. It's a no-brainer. So all of these ancient practices are what is supposed to be brought into divine union. Your divine union deserves these higher divine templates of these practices. So getting back on track to the program, when we take couples through, or partners, it's not even a couple thing. If you have a lover or someone that you connect with, you have a polarity with, and you're like, yo, come learn this advanced course. I want to do this, I want to cultivate this. I want to learn how to do this. So one of the exercises that's introduced in more advanced Tantra for you and your partner is to sit in front of each other naked, not touch, and fully engage in gaze and breath. And what starts happening is you start confronting a lot of the natural objectification you don't realize you're even doing to the human form that's naked, the form in its true state. And all that starts bringing up all kinds of stuff. It's a whole process. Doesn't sound like some freaky sexual stuff, does it? Seems more like some mental, psychophysical, whoa, look at all this stuff. It's very confronting. The evolution of that practice is for the partners to sit inside of each other and not move. So you plug in and you just relax into what it is to be connected with no goal, breathing, feeling each other, present with the breath. Challenging. Not super freaky and fun. It's actually taking you into abstractions from the indoctrination that is the normalcy of your lower frequency sexual exchanges and your sexual identity that you don't even realize is lower. So yeah, sometimes you're barely moving. The focus is on the meditation and the presence. And it's, again, with no goal. So it's not that there can't be a pickup. It does accelerate in the progressive intensity of building energy, just like when we're doing Breath of Fire. We'll start slower, and then we pick it up faster by the end of the Kriya. Then we blow it all out. We go into that breathless state, and then we take that deep breath, and we pressurize that oxygen into the bloodstream, and it gives us a profound pranic as well as electromagnetic charge that activates and charges the field. All of this is foundationally transferred into the practices of Tantric divine union and Taoist divine union. So there's a phrase that's used in, unfortunately in the Western culture of porn and, the more S&M-y. Oh, by the way, the whole S&M thing, pain, pleasure thing, that is all humans in their subconscious knowing there's something to activating both hemispheres. and reaching kind of blindly in the dark for something that they know does, is there, and they have some intuitive call towards. Well, let me tell you something. You don't have to spank each other. You don't have to inflict pain. You got so much pain in your own body. Trust me, just start digging that stuff out, and you're going to be activating that hemisphere. And then you bring in the pleasure side of it. So it's almost absurd that people you can see how misdirected it is. The intention is there, but they're blindly off base with the intuitive call to something different, and then of course it's externalized into these. So in these communities, they have something called edging, right? And that's where you're getting close to an orgasmic release, and then you pull back. Okay, I find this term offensive, but I'm just using it for reference. This is an example of, in the practices, when you are in divine union and actually in the aspect of connectedness and penetration, this is part of the strategy is to have a deeper understanding that you have to collectively build the energy together. And so that takes working together. And it's not just the masculine that's insensitive to this. I've had plenty of partners, the feminine, that was very goal-driven towards their own orgasm, just like men were. In fact, somewhat to a default of compromising the experience, because they weren't listening. They weren't feeling, oh, this person has an energy that's building and it doesn't work the same as my energy, and I need to work with that. And vice versa for the men. But I'm just saying, it's not one-sided, our disconnectedness to even feeling each other. And a lot of these intro practices are very much about this. They're very much about cultivating that aspect of subtleties of awareness and foundation for sensitivity, for body sensitivity, for connection, for your own connection to your own body, learning how to condition and gain more control, ladies and guys, for the pelvic floor muscles being very big. Most of our pelvic floor muscles are very atrophied. So part of Tantra practices is also even the individual practices for men and women, whether it be ladies squeezing the Kegels or guys. There's whole cultivation practices we do where we're clenching, holding, and releasing, clenching, holding, and releasing, clenching, holding, and releasing. You should technically be doing that the number of years you are old daily. And just like when you work out, in the gym, if you lay off working out, you lose ground. So it's the exact same, friends. It's all muscles, it's all muscle memory, and it's all conditioning. That said, all sexual energy can be tantric when done with awareness. Really, Tantra just means bringing more awareness to something. So it can go into raw, beautiful, passionate, I'm going to even say animalistic spaces. Even in some of the poses, they're beautiful, but there isn't a lower frequency aspect to it. It's more about the body's instinctual intelligence that comes in and starts guiding this higher template to come through. And obviously the breath work, as we talked about, is foundational. In fact, I want to challenge most of you, when you're intimate again, after hearing this, I want you to tune into your breath when you're in your intimacy next. See how sloppy and unrefined your breath is. See how oblivious you are to your breath. Besides maybe going, things like that, or most men especially, you breathe very erratic. And men, I want you to check something else. Tune into your belly. What happens to your belly when you are in intimacy? You're not paying attention. I'll tell you. It goes like this. It goes like this. It goes like this. Look at the difference with the belly, how you can let it stretch out or you can hold it in, right? So when, men, you're dropping your energy down, and this is just, it's a bad habit that you only have because you weren't given gnosis and training as a younger person, and then it warped into a bad habit. Okay? So, wow, I could tell the mic's kind of in the way, so you didn't get to see my dropped Buddha lower carnal belly. But that's the thing, guys. What's right above your sex center, where all this energy, you're trying to hold it back and hold and build it? What's above that? Would it be your abdomen? I believe it is. So if you're dropping all this weight and pressure into your abdomen, you're putting all this pressure on your sex center. That's not helping you. In fact, check yourself. When you're really in the experience of feeling, you are oblivious to holding the dantian. Your belly's dropped down. It's got big pressure on it. So here's a few tips for you. Tap into your breath. Go into your ujjayi. Remember, through the nose, through the throat. I've shown you guys how to even do this. So you open your mouth. Close halfway through, same as you exhale. You got to get this valve to open. When you do, and you breathe through this valve, it naturally regulates the heart. It regulates the circulation. It regulates the blood. It calms and grounds you, okay? When you're present in your breath, guess what? You can't be focusing on that sensation, goal obsession that you need to break the habit of anyways. Because your overall intention, if you're with a partner, should be to show up and ground and build and hold that space together. Not to have a goal of your own orgasmic, sensational pleasure, okay? Because that just objectifies and turns women into, and I coined this phrase, guys, you can use it if you want to, a schlong bong, okay? And women are not schlong bongs. That's right. And women, same for guys. They can be a schlong bong for you if you're just focusing on yourself. You see, you might as well just masturbate, because what is the point of selfishly doing that when you're with somebody? I don't really know. Besides being addicted to oxytocin, okay? Our little pleasure chemical release. And that's the thing, is that people build their own addiction to the pleasure of the sexual release, which is, again, it's a chemical process, guys, the oxytocin. You just get addicted to the oxytocin. So everyone has to break that habit of the oxytocin. And it's an evocative and seductive one once the energy starts activating. And that's one of your first Tantra challenges. Break that shit down. Break it down. And that's where, like I said, I wish more of these foundational things were in the Neo-Tantra, but they're not. And that's, I mean, it's the same with, it's kind of like there's neo-yoga too. So much of the true aspects of the yogic sciences have been lost in the West. They're not there. Bean, I knew you were gonna make a comment on that one. I know it's sad, isn't it? It's a sad thing. It's a sad thing that I've witnessed in everyone. I'm no different. Everyone. Over the years of identifying these bad habits, these lower frequency aspects of the perception of our sexuality, I have had to identify and look at all this. I've had to look at, oh my gosh, look at how I objectify women. That really powerful was Russell Brand was actually identifying. He was going through a big process of identifying how he objectifies women and really breaking that shit down. And the way he was describing it, again, was beautiful and parallel to myself. And I'm amazed too, by the way, and it's not just fellas, I'm amazed how objectified I've been from women as well. So it's not just a man thing. We are all conditioned to objectify the form. And that's part of why, like I said, in one of the first practices you could do, sitting just naked in front of each other and breaking that objectification, really getting to hold presence and witness each other in everything that you want to objectify and break it down. Another really good one, go be naked in nature. Think about it. Everything about our indoctrination, we've been in an artificial state, clothed in an artificial environment, like your whole life. So that means as soon as you take yourself in a natural state, in a natural environment, what's going to happen? The total reversal of everything that your psyche has been accommodated to and comfortable with has now been flipped. And that flipping starts unraveling all of these aspects that you had no awareness around. But, when I say Neo-Tantra, again, it was developed over the last 150 years, and its supposed aim is specifically more fulfilling of intimacy and connection, deeper connections to one's own body and emotions, et cetera, et cetera. But then it's just kind of warped, as everything warps in the West, because the deeper core aspects of truth are not being identified, like what we're doing right now. Word, truly, I appreciate that. From Cyprus. Glad to be reaching out and getting some of this out there to all of you. And I appreciate that. Truly, truly. Fire and water. We have to start seeing both, right? So, just a little basics on just Tantra to play with you guys, number one, create a sacred space. If you want to play with this, consciously disconnect from the mundane world, create an environment that feels sacred and a field that feels sacred. Fellas, the women really appreciate the sacredness of space. They do, and the intention behind it. It actually allows them to relax and open so much more because of the intentionality. Make it, make it a sacred ritual. In terms of purifying yourself, showering, adorning, preparing. So much of our sexuality is not only is it goal driven, but it's based on convenience and casual exchanges. It's the same when we meet people. You notice how when we have interactions, they're very transient. We don't sit down and create a field together, have an exchange, close that field and move on. That's why a lot of times people aren't really even receiving and retaining the information we're sharing in dialogue intellectually, let alone on an intimate level, right? Setting intentions for the connection with each other, and laying those connections into the field. By the way, here's a little tip for everybody as well, all based in holistic truth, also based off the divine laws of sexuality and our sexual sciences, the divinity of our sexual power. Will is everything. Your will, your free will, is the greatest gift God's given you. If you take your free will and you don't use it, or you cross divine law with it, then God's not punishing you. You literally did that to yourself. So I know it's easier to say, oh, I've been smited by God, or oh, I got a bum gig, or oh, it's the world. The world's just fucking fucked up place. And no, okay? You've been given the greatest gift. And that gift of free will can also be choosing to focus on whatever reality you want to create. Remember, conscious reality is what consciousness chooses to focus on, okay? So in that regard, when you state with your free will before you have divine union, so this can be one of your intentions. And by the way, this has been scientifically proven by me, who has 4 kids. If you state with your will, both men and women, this is an act for pleasure, for activation, for healing, for connection. This is not an act for a soul to come through. No soul can cross the will of another soul, just so you know. So if you don't do that, nobody knows to do that, then it's up to nature in terms of or your success on your pull-out method, or if you decide to try to retain your seed, which we're going to get into that. That's another one myths we're going to disprove, but we're going to do it from the Taoist side because there's actually a term for it. It's called stealing the tiger's purse. We'll talk about that. But if you state with your will, that's it. No soul can cross the will of another soul, period. Here's another one. If you go to sleep at night and you state with your will, I close my auric field, I close my energy field to all but my Christ self, all but my higher self. Say that 3 times. Guess what happens? You seal your field when you're sleeping. Nothing messes with you. You're sealed. If you don't use your free will to do that, well, then your auric field's open and you can get messed with in your sleep, as many people do. Test it. Everything's testable. I've tested it, and down to both my the mothers of my children, the only times we had kids and we had none of the rubber insulator protection in our intimacy were literally, for 2 of my children, were the one times I didn't say and state this intention of my free will. Nothing changed the routine, the process, all of it. Didn't release inside of her any of these things. Didn't state with my will. Boom. My other 2 kids were intentional. Okay. We wanted to, have a buddy for our buddy, so to speak. But I'm telling you, after so much intimacy, to see the one time, didn't state my will. Okay. Because those souls want to come through, especially in a relationship that's based in love, because the frequencies are there. So state with your will. Ladies, state with your will to your womb. This is not an act, and you got to be specific with your word spells. Don't say all the time, no souls can come through. Don't say that if you want to have kids later on. You don't know what they'll have. It's like, you state, identify this act, this expression, this experience. No soul can cross through my lineage, my life force. This is an act for healing, for connection. This is not an act for a soul to come through. No soul is welcome to come through me in this specific exchange. How powerful is it if you actually knew how to use your will? Straight up. Important, guys. Really, really important to play with. And by the way, of course they don't want you to know this, because then they can justify you using a rubber insulator, which blocks all connection between the 2 of you, by the way. And they can also then, murder over 600 and how many million 64 million babies over the last how many years for, harvesting their genetics and whatnot, and then connecting us to the suffering of the innocent and all of the deeper ritualistic aspects that are right there if you want to look at them. I mean, truly, even down to, this thing that has really been a challenge for all of us for the last 2 years. What do you think's in that? Kind of things are in that. I can't talk more about it because I don't want this show to get taken down because we're on fire right now. Okay, so number 2, setting the space and tensions. Number 2 would be the eye gazing, sitting in front of each other. I recommend that you do it naked so that you can challenge that aspect to break the objectification and go straight into the presence and connectedness. Okay, sitting up straight. You're going to sit in what we call easy pose, right? You can prop with a pillow if you want to. But again, everyone needs to get more comfortable sitting on the floor in easy pose anyways. It's going to help your spine to be erect. And by the way, we covered this in a class I taught the other day. Your spine is like a stack of plates, and you can balance on them to where you don't have to be erecting yourself with your muscles and putting all that pressure on your muscles. You can actually just sit balanced in that stack of plates, and it takes very little effort. It's one of the foundations of meditation. This is why I'm saying all the practices individually cultivate and carry over into the most effective karmic tantric divine unions that you have. Okay? So you're gazing at your beloved, you're seeing this divine spark, you're marveling at the pure life force that is animating this reflection of consciousness within you. And, it's good to start. I like 3s. Start with 3 minutes, okay? And then, there's a variance of exercises. There's an exercise where you can put your hand on each other's heart. In fact, there's some beautiful, that's where, white Tantra through the lineages of the Sikhs. And listen, it's been the fall of the guru, okay? Yogi Bhajan, and I honestly think that he actually did this to destroy the 3HO organization that was controlling kundalini through the Western culture. I think he wanted to bring the system down because it just opened up in a crazy way. But I will tell you this. He was still a man, okay? He's not a god, and he was a guru, but he was a human being, and it was the 70s, and he did some not okay things, truly. Where he fell deep into the lower frequency himself. But the sciences that he cultivated are just the sciences. They're not personalized to him. So I address this because some of the white Tantra techniques are so advanced to what generic Tantra would be, white Tantra would be, in terms of the breath work, how we place the hands on each other. There's just so many cool variances. Like I said, one of them is you interlock your hands behind the other person's neck, and there's yours. And you're just here with them, like staring, like right in there. Whew. So all of these practices also can be advanced in plugging into each other and continuing. So, and again, it's not a rush. It's a gradual process to do so. So then you plug into each other, you breathe, you go into the eyes and the focus. You can also do the heart meditation one. You can integrate breath work as well. I recommend the pranayama with each other because, again, you're syncing your breath. You're actually syncing your breath with a very specific breath. So again, it's very easy to sync in the ujjayi with each other, which is nose to the throat, right? Once you get into that tempo with each other, it just keeps going. And you might fall out of it, but then you sink back in again because the breath is what's really going to sync that dynamic stimulus release that activates both of you collectively. You can transition from there to the tantric massage. Now, again, most tantric massage is very superficial. That's why I'm telling you that when you practice neuromuscular release therapy and you're using this cross-lateral unlocking of the tissue, it actually does more to invoke what we call dynamic stimulus release, which is stimulating both hemispheres, left and right, pain, pleasure. That's going to cause the arcing of the hemispheres. This is where, in Westernization, there's a dilution to these sciences, and it was passed down. It became diluted in countries of origin before it even went to the West. But so that's where you're incorporating touch and contact to do a plethora of things. And again, it's one thing to unlock the trauma with each other as you're grounded and breathing together and playing the pleasure and pain off of each other. It's another thing where one partner gets to lie back and just receive, tuning into their sensuality, their sensations of their body, getting to know their body again, and then you switch, and then the other person gets to do it. It's beautiful. It's a way of giving. It's a way of intimacy that does not have a goal, that's putting you, once again, remember, we have a very controlled perspective of what sexuality looks like. So anything that goes outside of that goes into a realm of abstraction and will challenge your indoctrination, and good. Because who put this shit in a box like this? I gotta say. Because the box it's in is low level as fuck. Okay? It's just lower. I'm sorry, it just is. We wouldn't have the push to enliven or activate or go into all these novelty extensions of sexuality if it was truly fulfilling and had depth to it. So then a lot of the poses will come from what they call the yab-yam position, which is, let's see, what I'm wondering is why, let me see, I think my keyboard just died. I think that's officially what's going on here. Let me see. Luckily, I have a backup. Let's get this thing going. Here we go. Oh, wow. This thing is dusty as ever. Let's do this. All right. I think all clear. Let's see. No, still not doing it. All right. Ultimately, this is about us bringing our electromagnetic fields together from an independent state and really coming into this divine crossing of polarity, which is really hard because we're so inverted and screwed up in our polarity. As it is, how are we going to come together in polarity and union when the feminine is inverted into the masculine and the masculine is inverted into the feminine? It's so deeply set and indoctrinated on the exchange by exchange social basis. It's very hard for us to actually get into that union and intimacy. So, the Tao. We're going to get into this as well. So, the yab-yam, let me go back. This is a good example. I was trying to find the yab-yam for you guys. There was one version. There we go. Here's yab-yam right here. Why is this not working? Yosef. Yes. Can you go to the closet in the hallway and grab me some batteries for this? I'm dead on the keyboard. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you, brother. Downstairs? Yeah, just in the hall. That one the one where the batteries and tools and stuff are. There should be some double A's. Thank you. I don't like having to press this like this. So the yab-yam is basically this. The masculine sitting in easy pose and the feminine is facing with our legs wrapped around. This is putting us both in an erect position to bring energy up as we're doing breath and conjuring these piezoelectric charge relay system off of each other. Remember, when one person builds the piezoelectric charge, it's one thing. When another person builds it with them, that there's a dynamic electromagnetic ascension process that happens when timed and synced with the pranic energy at the same time. So the yab-yam is a classic tantric position. It represents ultimately the union of Shiva and Shakti, the two divine energies of masculine and feminine. But remember, these are just energies. It doesn't matter that, and when we polarize our energies internally, thank you, sir, that polarity is sovereign in and of itself. So we're really bringing our balanced masculine and feminine together in its own syncretic union that's sovereign in and of itself. Here we go. Batteries. Crapple keyboards, guys. What can one say? Here we go. See if we got this thing working now. Oh, there we go. Yay. So it's ultimately about this. It's about the divine activation of your own supercomputer and its divine return to this blissful creator God state that can converge into two divine aspects of this union. So it is powerful. The base partner, the Shiva, who's energetically or physically the penetrator, sits cross-legged on a pillow, like I said, or just if you're comfortable on the ground because you've been meditating more. And the Shakti, who's energetically or physically the receiver, excuse me, can either drape her legs over the partner's legs with her buttocks on the bed or the pillow, or can fully sit in the lap of your partner. The base partner's arms should go around the waist of the other partner. And heads can be cheek to cheek or straight forward, forehead to forehead, eye gaze to eye gaze. Remember, the kiss even is an electromagnetic conduit. So kissing is the final catalytic activation. And also the kiss connects to the heart. It's a deeper electromagnetic field connection. Okay, that's why prostitutes won't kiss on the mouth. Don't you think that's weird? They're gonna put, a lingam in their mouths or do all this other freaky stuff, but they won't kiss. Why? It's because even they know there is a higher personal heart connection to that, and their heart isn't in those connections with you. So if you are really into that, and I don't know why some men are so drawn to prostitutes, that component is never there. You're getting you're getting exactly what you want, I guess, the shlongbong, right? Bringing it back to the shlongbong. Once you come into alignment through the breath, which it's good to exhale everything out together. Start at that base anchor. You sync the breaths, and then you begin moving together in sync based off the breath. The breath is always first. That's why I recommend as partners, you actually go into the breath first and just sit. Like I said, it's one of the hardest exercises in Tantra for people to sit inside of each other, plugged in, and just breathe and just be. Because it challenges all of the directives of goal orientation, right? And after being and really grounding into that presence, can you start through the breath? Will you start intuitively, naturally starting to work together and move together? Now, there are all kinds of beautiful advanced techniques to this, whether it be spinal flexes together, where you're flexing the spine. So what I'm doing right now is the most dynamic movement. I'm actually kind of pumping the spine, if you think about it. So you can actually, in opposition to each other, spinal flex your spine away and together simultaneously, syncing the breath. And then you take that breath pressurization. We've gone through it so many times on the show, guys. You can look back at so many episodes where we show you how to do these breath pressurizations. And you're syncing the breath together, and you finish with that deep pressurization. And there is the most profound euphoria. Sometimes you'll even leave your body. We call this a specific technique where we call it the astral projection, where you will literally leave your body and come back into your body. And that is one of the highest states when you can get there, where you'll actually both leave the body together. You pour it out, and you come back into your bodies plugged into each other, which normally when you come back in your body after you leave, it's disorienting, but it is the most grounded thing to be plugged in on the deepest levels to the person that you love and care about when you do these ascension processes. So ultimately, this is going to break you out of your sexual routines. And thank goodness. It naturally will do that. It will naturally push you out of those routines, out of bad habits that keep you stuck in a lower sexual rut, so to speak. Tantra's really about you're gonna have to throw all that stuff out, okay, and start fresh with everything. And it's gonna be uncomfortable and awkward at first, maybe, or you're gonna be triggered in your ego and all that shit. You gotta let it go. You gotta find your innocence. You got to return to this pure state, like you're brand new again. Like this is it actually technically is the first time you'll actually be really having true intimacy. What an exciting thing, right? So there should be a playfulness there, and an intimacy, and an innocence to the intimacy, an excitement, a purity that unfortunately gets distorted because all of us, unfortunately, in a world of sexual distortions, repression, oppression, unfortunately have had unconscious or disappointing sexual exchanges. And generally that's because we're meeting the self-centeredness and the indoctrinated distortions of others. Whatever you're experiencing now, in terms of what you think is magical with sexuality, I promise you, it's like 2 to 5% of what's really there. If you choose to dive deeper and actually look at what the true act of divine union is about for us. So, although it's about letting go of goals, through letting go of those goals and diving deeper into what this is, the rewards are interdimensional orgasmic bliss beyond what you could ever truly know. That's why, it's amazing how much people think sexuality is amazing now in this lower level rut, this animalistic monkey fucking, primal, lower kind of caveman sex directive. And I'm challenging all the men out there. So guess what? Your generic, monotonous missionary position that you think is so cool and great, or you're a notorious porno pound, is, you think that's great, huh? You think you got it all dialed? It's very humbling to see you know nothing. Nothing. And I'm going to say for the feminine, if you think you got it all dialed, I think it's a whole other world. It's amazing. Profoundly beyond anything. It truly is sacred sexuality. And it is an integral part of the path to awakening and personal evolution. We have some quotes that are going to reflect on this, just, how much it's almost as if we've had it associated that sexuality is not spiritual or conscious or spiritual, because especially in religion, obviously religion has had such a dogma and distortion towards sexuality. And why wouldn't they? Because ultimately all that was put in place because the priests who had the ear, the hand of the king, were threatened by the queen, the feminine, the woman, because they wanted to control the kings who controlled the kingdom. So it was a direct threat, sexuality, the connection with the divine feminine. And so much of that was distorted, even down to our story of Mary Magdalene being a prostitute, this and that, it's all, again, all of it. Oh, and Jesus reached these ascended higher states of divine alchemy just by himself, when the reality is, no, it took the conjuring and dynamics of the divine feminine to activate this profound synthesis, which he embodied and went to that supernatural Jedi divine alchemist state. But naturally, it's this polarity we see here. It's all about it. So we're closing out the tantric side here, moving into the Tao. Obviously, taking we're diving in a lot more deep and more in depth than I was planning. But that's just, I guess that's a reflection, isn't it, and a metaphor even for what we're talking about with divine union and what we think it is and where it really goes. So let's just reflect on the benefits again. Benefits of Tantra, getting more out of what you want truly deeper with intimacy and sexuality, releasing blocks and shame, finding healing from sexual trauma. And let's face it, 75%, that's 3/4 of women, have had some form of sexual abuse, physical abuse. And then let's look at the statistics for interpersonal violence. Okay. 1 in 3 women have been victims of interpersonal violence. And guess what? Ladies, I'm going to throw a little statistic at you. 1 in 4 men have been victims of interpersonal violence or intimate partner violence, including myself. So it's not just the feminine. We all have traumas to work through. Awakening your sexual energy to freely flow more within your body, which is going to, again, all science says, boost your immunity. You age, your whole aging process is different. There's some really powerful studies that have shown people in their 50s and 60s that have more healthy sexual routine. And by the way, that's still lower frequency sexual, but they have a healthy consistency to it. Younger, better blood work, more energy, more successful, happier, live longer. So there's just a list and lists of what sexuality, and you look it all up. The science is there for it. And this is science that's taken off, again, lower level sexual interactions that they're testing people from. They're not testing tantric practitioners, okay? Accessing your fullest pleasure, tuning in more to the subtle energies in your body, the sensitivities, the subtleties and nuances you didn't even know were there, because your focus has been controlled and goal directed. Discovering full body and or multiple waves of orgasms, more deeper circuits. For the men, learning more control, how to actually build that energy more and sync with the feminine to have a larger orgasmic release that's different than you just getting her to release and feel like you're the man. Oh, I make sure no. It's way harder to actually sync yourself with. It's a whole other deal, and you have to include the breath with it. Experiencing a new level of heart connection with an individual that's higher. It's a deeper level of intimacy and loving presence. Longer lovemaking sessions, more profound, deeper lovemaking sessions. Enhanced communication and communion with another. Holistic mind, body, spirit connection with yourself and with your partner. So, there are many myths about Tantra. I hope we were able to address some of them and really look into the deeper purity of what this spiritual practice of devotion is truly about, ultimately for yourself, capital S. Okay. And there's a correlation as we go to the Tao. This is an old piece of Taoist art. We're actually I have some Taoist manuals that are so in depth, and I'm going to give you a psychology perspective or perception perspective of how the Tao and the sciences of the Tao were looked at to use sexuality to heal you of various ailments. And I'm talking like it was like a diagnosis, like, oh, a man has a regular consistency with his sperm. Okay, you do this position 5 times a day for 6 days and he's cured. That's a very common Taoist diagnosis and like protocol for healing, let's say a man with irregular sperm. If a woman has an ovarian cyst, do this position 4 times a day for 5 days and she's cured. Now I got to tell you, the Chinese culture is a very detail-oriented scientific culture. So, and they cultivated that even in ancient times off of testing things and scientific method. And so when they're saying this, it's not like they're just throwing this randomly out there. This is through literally them going through the system of the body, its irregularities, its compromises, and ways to bring healing to various ailments and conditions. Let me bring up my wonderful notes for the Tao. Here we go. Dowie Tao Tao. You know, the Tao is a very broad term, okay? The Tao itself has to do with meditation, presence, ceremony, ritual that's about honoring basically God on a daily basis, and routines that are very mindful. And at the same time, let me find my little spacer. At the same time, there naturally was obviously a practice of spirituality that branched over into sexuality from the way of the Tao, the Wu Wei, the Zen, and all the metaphysical side of the spiritual mindfulness. Naturally was there practices where that the Tao was brought into sexuality. These practices were always known as what's called joining energy. Very interesting correlation to looming or interweaving, joining energy, or the joining of essences. Practitioners believe that by performing these arts, one can stay in good health and attain longevity or spiritual advancement. Again, paralleled reflections to Tantra. Much of this came around during the Han Dynasty, where these spiritual practices, this perception of spirituality was applied into sexuality. First in sexual texts that survived to this day that they found, as well as just so much art and so much in many ancient texts. And even, like I said, we're going to look at some of the correlated Taoist sexual practice manuals. Even we're going to look at some of the aspects of it. So even this art here, or this art, which looks really blurry here, and I don't know why. By the way, here's that Yabyang. So Montauk Chia, and I just want to plug first and foremost, and we've been trying to get a dear brother of mine who trained directly with Montauk Chia and is actually a big proponent of all of the Taoist practices. I do, because he's just gone so deep, Jedi Master, into the Tao. And the practices that I've dove into from Mantak Chia have changed my entire life. And I love the Tao so much. I almost go more into the Tao than I do the Hindu side of Tantra in terms of personal practices, because they're just so well designed. So there's some reading material I'm going to, give you guys, and I recommend for you to explore. One example, let's see, all of Mantak Chia's books, but we have, here we go. The Taoist Secrets of Love, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy. This one right here, guys, this is your manual, okay? Ladies, here we go. Cultivating Female Sexual Energy. So you can see there's literally different books for our different vehicles, because there are different practices for you than there are for us, for instance, ladies. So there are ovarian breathing techniques. Guys, there's all these pelvic floor muscle techniques. There are these deep stretches and conditioning exercises for your lingam to circulate the fluid so that it doesn't build up in the testes if you're not being sexually active, just to move the energy. Like I said, equipment that's stagnant is also going to degrade, just like equipment that is overused. Yes, J22, I can. In fact, it's funny, I looked over at this as I was addressing that. So there's 3 techniques, guys, that you can do. And I'm going to describe them to you, because I can't just stand up and drop trow and do them for you. I don't have any triggers around these kinds of things, but I know that this video would get taken down for that. But I will tell you, my dear Jedi brother, he has an entire platform where he's put so much energy into this. He's standing in a river naked, showing you the techniques straight up, tactful, efficient, right there for you. Boom, boom, boom. And he's got hundreds of videos. I believe it's tantrayoga.com. Watch this. I'm gonna literally look, because I want to get this. And we will get him on here. One of these days, him and I are going to align to be able to do this. Let me see. But I'm literally going to stop right now so I can get you his website, because for those of you that really do want like a visual reference and actually really see these, I'm going to describe them really well for you. But I want to give this out because it's such a powerful resource, and this guy's put so much into it. He really has. And I have such a deep respect. He's like really like a militant practitioner. I mean, his level of discipline is just profound, and always has been since we were young students of the same yogi. That's just him. It's always been that way. All right. I'm scrolling for, cause he gave it to me, in our last exchange. Here we go. There he is. Okay, here we go. I just want to get the name right for you guys. We had a whole thing where okay, here it is. Tao Yogi, guys. Okay. So it is taoyogi.com. taoyogi.com. Okay. And you're welcome ahead of time. You can check out, like I said, he has a profound library, including like visuals, and like he did animations to show the microcosmic orbit, which we're going to get into. So, let's see, where are we at with this? All right. So in the Taoist practice and in the Taoist sciences of sexuality, it's known that we have something called this microcosmic orbit. It is the exact same thing as the kundalini in terms of it is this circular circuit that goes up the spine and comes down the front. And actually, when we do these breath techniques, we're pulling the breath up along the spine the same way we do our pressurizations for kundalini. The only difference is when we draw it up, we're tucking the chin, and then we lift the chin as we exhale the waterfall of prana down the front, and we push it down into the belly. So the belly goes in and draws it along the spine, and the chin comes up and we push it down the front. And you can actually feel this movement, circular movement, that is so powerful, that we really are or should be constantly cultivating and practicing to get more fluent, to get more acclimated to controlling, manipulating, moving this microcosmic orbit to circulate properly through the body. In doing so, it's moving the sexual energy and merging it into a more saturated field capacity within us, as opposed to not moving it at all, and then our hertz level and our energy just kind of stays stagnant where it's at. So the 3 practices, real quick before we move on, fellas, the first one is going to be you cup the testes in the hands against the trunk of the body, okay? And I'm literally going to stand up anyways, just because. You compress, and as you inhale, you compress the testes to the pubis, and you draw the abdomen in. So your exhale, the stomach falls back down. Inhale, you're pulling. You're using the vacuum of this abdominal cavity to pull, like you're milking and circulating and pulling the energy up, okay? You're supposed to do this the number of years you are old every day, and you finish blowing all the air out, and then you take that deep breath, pressing and compressing the testes. You're now pulling and taking a deeper cosmic orbit pressurization, holding, squeezing, pressurizing the oxygen, and lifting the chin, and you exhale and bring it down the front. So that's the first one. That's going to circulate the fluid in the testes. It's going to move the fluid. It's going to stimulate the testes so that you're not getting any type of developments or growths on the testes in any way. And by the way, guys, this stuff is so important because our sex centers are under attack right now. They just are in this day and age. I mean, even this thing that's circulating now and spreading from those that chose to do it to those they're interacting with intimately that don't even realize it. Kind of like this other thing, what is it? Oh, yeah. This is the newest round from the last one. So specifically our spleen, our liver, and ovaries or testes are being targeted. So you need to be moving that fluid anyways, no matter what. The second one is that you're going to grab the penis and testes from the trunk to the base of the pubis. And you're going to pull like you're holding from releasing. And you're going to do, in a sense, a neck roll, but a different kind of a neck. And you're clockwise and counterclockwise, at least 3 times each way, maybe 6, and back the other way. And you're holding like you're pulling. So you're going to feel a stretch along the trunk to the front of the pubis. And you're doing those. And then the next one is called an XY stretch. And it's where we grab the shaft of the lingam and the testes, and you actually pull one this way and you pull one the other way. Now, guys, I promise you, and you'll see as soon as if you try it, whoa, this doesn't hurt you at all. It's not intense. It actually feels really good. So you're pulling the shaft this way, the testes this way, and then you switch. You pull the shaft this way and the testes this way. So it makes an XY stretch, right? Okay. These are 3. They take maybe not even 5 minutes unless you want to put a little more time into it. You do them in the shower. Boom, like nothing, like brushing your teeth, incorporating this into your lifestyle. So J22, hope that helped you with your inquiry on applicability. And also, like I said, DaoYogi.com, my brother Lauren's website has so much more for you to explore. So many more Taoist practices for men and for women, with beautiful animations and just magical stuff. And these books, foundational, okay? There's so much dogmatic, false ideologies around sexuality, and someone who has a lot of sexual energy can also have a very healing energy, because sexual energy is healing energy at a spiritual level. The best healers have lots of sexual energy. So unfortunately, sexual energy has been distorted with sexual addiction, oxytocin addiction, carnal obsession, objectification, and maybe just the lower level obsession or love with sexuality. Because it's been oppressed, we have this weird thing with it. You know what I mean? And another one, that people who have sexual energy are not spiritual or conscious. They're probably more spiritually inclined, actually, because all sexual energy is spirit energy, kundalini energy, chi energy, creative energy. It's the same. It's the same energy. There are components of desire and allowing, Those are the two components that must be present in successful creation of anything that you're doing. So it's your life force, energy, and many of you are suddenly opening wider to this energy within yourselves because you want to accelerate your process of awakening. Sexual energy is your creative energy. It is the foundational energy, and we just talked about the science of it, where you bring this piezoelectric charge up, you arc the hemispheres, you can activate the frontal cortex. It's the conduit to activating your higher divine capacity. Sexual energy between two people is a primal force comprised of power, energy that moves toward another, and virtue, knowing the energy between the two is right. All of these components we are very disconnected from, unfortunately. And unfortunately for the feminine, as the more powerful sex energy, they also carry the burden of more trauma, more either liberation, activation, and awakening, or compromise, retardation, shutting down, damage, weight bearing, so to speak. You see, the feminine and the masculine embody the very equipment that we house. For us men, the lingam is shaft-like. It is a penetrator. It's not a containing vessel. We don't take on the energy the same way from experiences, unconscious experiences especially. The feminine is designed like the womb, like a chamber, like a chalice. And so in sexual experiences that are especially lower frequency, unconscious, God forbid, even negative, they contain the energy and frequency of those experiences until they move and clear that energy. Nobody taught us to do these things, right? That's why this is so important. And I'm going to show you also why that is as well. Then we have the masculine has its own process. This is an example, okay, right here, of a technique that we do for strengthening the earth energy up into the penis, past the hu yin, into the spine, and up into the back of the head. These are personal practices. This is on the earth. You do this, extending your leg out and bringing it back down while you're doing these pulls from the root at the hu yin, the perineum point. Okay, I'm just showing a few examples of these, okay? Here's another. There's a beautiful example of the feminine and the microcosmic orbit and the various centers that they have marked, by the way, down to like governor vessels, okay, throughout the nervous system and the body. Now, they have names for them, like the jade pillow, the Yu Chen, but these are all specific neurological points. How about the door of life, the Ming Men, okay? The governor channel begins right at the base. You can see at the coccyx. And then of course, you have the hu yin at the perineum. You can see how it's a circuit. And this circuit gets blocked. And it gets blocked a lot at the xuan cheng, which is the heart. Because all of us are kind of stuck solar plexus to heart right now. We're kind of blocked. So, the sexual center can be open and active, but if it's blocked from solar plexus to heart, the feminine is even going to be in a less intimate heart space connected sexuality and more just sexually driven for the orgasm, for the experience, for the goal. Because I'm sorry, like I said, the inversion guys, you have women that are masculinized. Well, that's also in sexuality. That means that they can be very sexually driven. Now, there's 3 orgasms that the feminine can have: clitoral, vaginal, and cervical. The vaginal and cervical are the ones that are going to activate this circuit and move and route this energy. Just the clitoral, the surface external, is a hollow, empty orgasm that unfortunately becomes the goal-directed focus a lot of times for the masculinized female. Another thing, the vaginal and cervical orgasms generally are starting to naturally open as you're little girls, as you're young, and they have to do with something that is called amrita, or divine nectar in Tantra. It's a female ejaculation process that, by the way, feels like you're going to go pee. And so most women don't have this explained when they're younger. And so they clench and shut those centers down and they don't get access to them again. Again, retardation to the divinity of our circuitry. Here's a more generic, I hope... Look at the digitization of this. This is just sad. I'm sorry about that, guys. I don't know why this didn't save. This was actually a very detailed, yeah. But you can see the general gist of the the technology of this vehicle and its microcosmic orbit and the various centers with which we move and route this energy. And there is, again, a movement that goes up and around and down, circulating. Look at this. This is very important too. This is how detailed. I just want to show how detailed they were around sexuality, around our bodies, around our even hands and feet. I mean, look at, where is it? Look at this. Just even how, bro, can you, 1 second, friends. Sorry, friends. My little gay gnome groundskeeper, best friend from 30 years ago, is decided he's going to go gangbusters on the weed whacker in the background, because I guess he doesn't know that we're still recording a show. So I'm going to send out one of my dear brothers and practitioners and apprentices to inform him. So apologies for the background sound through the process. But just look at the detail to the nerves and the circuitry of your bodies. These are like the little fuse boxes for a car. And this is all science. Look it up. Look at all the nerves that run to all the organs of the body. The body is such a detailed piece of machinery. So just the same, the sex center works the same. Take a look at these neural transit points, circuit points to the sex centers. We look at the lingam. We have heart, lungs, spleen, pancreas, liver, kidneys. And same here, starting with the cervix, heart, lungs, through the vaginal canal. We have spleen, pancreas, liver, kidneys. All these are organs running through. So the lingam was originally looked at as like a torch, like a lightsaber that could illuminate the womb, clear and transmute energies that are held in this chamber. Now, equally, if an unconscious lower frequency masculine could also be dumping, so to speak, negativity, energy into that womb. If he was angry earlier in the day and then you're intimate with him, that energy is going in. You're containing and having to transmute that. It's a lot. It's a lot. And it affects the energy centers. It affects the dantian and the circuitry, especially if you are not doing practices like this. Take a look. This is just a basic diagram for Taoist practices for the womb and abdomen. I have another one that's really good. And again, 3 times each. You do the left, you do the right. 3 times each, left, right. So specific, so detailed, so loving and focused on healthy divine circuitry, healthy divine mechanics to invoke the divinity of your being through recognizing the divinity of your being and avoiding things like this, like ovarian cysts that collect in the body, which again is just a sign of the circuitry not running properly through the mechanism. And who's going to feel that? The feminine, because they're holding that frequency in a different way than masculine. But make no mistake, fellas, you ain't getting away from it that easy either, because the number one killer of men throughout history, the number one killer right now, if you don't die from something else, you will die from prostate cancer. Look up that statistic, because your prostate is its own toxin storage bin that's just collecting. If it's never activated, it's the generator for your lingam. So when your prostate goes down, your dick doesn't work anymore. So fellas, if you like your lingam and you want it to work, you better take care of your prostate. It's neutral. Science is neutral. So if you're triggered around that, that's your thing. You should really look at it. So here's a good example of a nice abdominal massage for the feminine, for the womb. This is, again, similar to some of the womb work that we do with neuromuscular therapy, except for we work more around the belly button itself right here, about 2 finger lengths from each one, starting north, going west. Starting south, going west, north, east, and then finishing south. And we start with circles like this, and then we actually go deeper into those points and open them. There is a self-treatment system, and it will be coming out in our 13 video series for the self-treatment work. Trying to get that out by Christmas for all of you. I really recommend that womb sequence for yourselves. But even just this, you're moving in a clockwise direction. You're moving with these circles. All of this, you have access to all of this, guys. All of this to ultimately do this right here, to activate a multitude of zones that go through the entire body that are tied to your sacred mechanism, okay? How about even the concept? Did you know there was yoni reflexology? When you are activated properly by a more conscious partner, they can, with their tool, their lingam, activate these various neural centers to bring about this deeper electromagnetic circuitry activation that's going clitoral, vaginal, cervical. It's routing a bioelectric charge through the being. And of course, some of the highest we call anking, where the energy shoots up the spine and the feminine starts shaking uncontrollably through the electromagnetic charge that's routing through the system. It is beautiful. It is intuitive. It is a remembrance of, oh, this is where we're supposed to be. This is what we're all supposed to be doing and sharing with each other. And it's reflected again throughout nature, throughout sacred symbology. It's everywhere. Sexuality is reflected throughout nature. In fact, I'm going to decode mind blow you with this one. Your consciousness is the masculine. It's penetrating through reality, okay? The feminine is the womb of the realm of reality that you're penetrating through. So literally, as you move through reality, you are having sex with reality. Your consciousness is having sex with the very reality it's moving through. Every second of your existence. Everything is reflected back to the divinity of what has been deeply distorted and kept from us in terms of our divinity. And we can see this. We can see the portal and the divinity that's represented to this gate of dimensions of magic. She is Mother Earth, and through her womb, life is born and dies. She is the gate to the underworld and the goddess that witch and the warlock step down into the order to be initiated. She is the realm of death and the mother to all life. The pointed oval was the worldwide symbol for the great mother goddess because it represented the external genitalia of the female, because all these things were depicted and they were seen by these supposed primitive civilizations, by the way. They saw it everywhere. It is literally reflected in all things. And our divinity isn't just reflected through nature, it's reflected in us. Y'all should look up semen therapy. It's pretty crazy. There's actually even a website for it. I don't know if you know what the nutritional content of that's in semen, just like we've talked about uropathy. But it is a sacred medicine. It has every mineral and vitamin in the nutritional spectrum that you require. It is not something gross that we laughed about in Something About Mary, where it got stuck in her hair, and it's all been made to be gross. You're gross, your fluids are gross, everything about you is gross. Instead of, you are this divine reflection, this divine machine, this magical embodiment of the divine, and actually everything about you is sacred. Everything about you is sacred. Your urine has all the antibodies as well as all 11 mineral salts your body requires in it. When you consume it, it's magical. It changes your life. I literally healed myself of MRSA staph. I battled for 8 months. It saved my life, where antibiotics wouldn't do anything because all the antibodies for the MRSA staph was in me. This was years and years and years ago. So I became like a health study for this, and semen, no different. It is one of the most powerful nutritional sources. I mean, the list of things it actually helps with, from depression, literally crazy things you wouldn't even believe: diabetes, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy. Like it's insane to see what this helps with. Bouts of depression, neurological imbalances. And I actually had a practice that I was directed to from one of my teachers long ago, to actually consume my seed on a regular basis, which was very confronting and made me go through all this stuff and look into what it is. So take a look. The value of semen, the vital energy, the semen that supports your life, which shines in your sparkling eyes, which beams in your shining cheeks, is the great treasure for you. 1 drop of semen is manufactured through 40 drops of blood. 40 meals gives rise to 1 drop of blood. I want you to think about that. 40 drops of blood gives rise to 1 drop of semen. 1 ejaculation could repopulate the entire United States. Sexual fluid is your glow. It's your vibrance. It's your contentment. It also gives strength to your prana powers, your ability to be present as a person conserves. And this is bringing us to stealing the tiger's purse in the Tao. Okay, guys? There's a reason that there's a phrase in the Tao called, yeah, baby, Shambhavu. That's it. Stealing the tiger's purse. And you want to know why that is? I'm going to tell you why. Because we are so fucking materialistic. It's just absurd. Okay? We think that life only matters in us or animals if we're in the physical form, first and foremost. We don't understand how the energy transference works. Whether it be how animals consume other animals and the energy transfers and the spirit transfers, and it's how animals actually ascend through the animal kingdom, being consumed by higher organisms that consume them, the predatory to the prey. There is an intentional receptivity of each animal consuming the other animal, and there's an energetic ascension process. It's literally how consciousness evolves through the animal chain, is the souls merge with the souls into higher complexity, etc. Okay. Agree. Well, you know what? That's the thing, though. It's actually kind of not true. Your body is a giant filter. So all the crap that you're eating gets dumped into your filter, and what comes through you is actually pure. Think about a filter, right? That's how charcoal filters. They absorb all the crap, and then the clean water comes out. So no, actually, if you were a homeless guy that ate garbage, that urine stream, despite everything else that was compromised, is probably, I'm not going to say it's clean and whatever, I'm saying it's the cleanest of the things that's coming through that filter. Okay. So equally, the semen is also this pure product that you produce. But here's the thing. Okay. This is the thing. That fluid is produced to be moved. Okay. It takes decades to learn to move the seminal fluid, pulling with a level of pelvic floor control and cultivation and conditioning that, I'm sorry, fellas, you just don't have. You can't make that happen for you by choosing or hearing someone tell you, oh, hold your seed, it's the more conscious thing. And here's what I'm going to tell you, that it's not only is it goes against holistic truth. And here's why. The goal is not to hold the seed. Okay. The seed holds a life force and an energy. Okay. The goal is to hold the seed as it comes down into the chamber through these sacred practices, is to hold the seed for at least 30 minutes. Okay. Now, interestingly, in order to activate the vaginal and clitoral deeper healing circuitry, organ healing, microcosmic orbit healing, orgasms for the feminine, it takes roughly about 30 minutes to be able to build and conjure that deeper orgasm within the feminine. When you hold your seed for at least 30 minutes, maybe even more, hold it for an hour, hold it for 2, whatever. But make sure you release it after, because here's the thing. Once you hold that energy and chi for a period of time, and ideally build it to a generating release with the feminine, that energy is now absorbed in the field. And that fluid is super magical, and you should consume it, put it in your face and hair and all over your body, whatever you want to do. It's amazing for the skin, amazing for the hair. I recommend just consuming it. It's so nutritious. But it's just fluid now. Now, if you let that fluid come down and release, inside of 30 minutes of holding the energy so it absorbs in the field. It's the same mechanics for Qigong, guys. When we're doing practices, we're going to do it for at least 30 minutes because we're building Qi that's going to absorb in the field, just the same. This seed, this energy needs to be held in the field, and then it becomes collectively absorbed in the union. And now it's just fluid. And if you hold that fluid and you don't release it, you are stupid, and you're going to back your system up, and you're going to give yourself reproductive problems in your equipment. Prove me wrong. because I work with thousands of men to help clear the genital trauma of their genitals being mutilated from circumcision and help them with their backed up problems in their prostate and stuff. And guess what? Tons of them have been doing this false seminal retention. If you're going to hold that, you got to move it. The problem is you don't have enough training and conditioning over decades to learn how to do that. So you're not moving it. I don't care if you think you are, you're not moving it. So it's just building and staying. That's why it's called stealing the tiger's purse in the Tao. Check it out. Do some research in it. Plus, it's going to produce the results for you, and you're going to see it. You're going to feel pain. You're going to feel backed up. You're going to feel compromised in your sex center because you're not supposed to be doing that. You missed the point because someone distorted that in the westernized Neo-Tantra or whatever, or the Tao. Rarely the Tao, because the Tao, they'll call it out and they'll be like, no. You just need to hold. You need to hold because it's about the energy being absorbed. And if you just release it out, boom, total energy loss, total energy waste, boom, you're depleted. That's the key. And ironically, you can see it reflected in the feminine's process in the union. That roughly 30 minutes or even more that builds that deeper cervical, deeper bonding internal process within the feminine that's the most regenerative, the most rejuvenating for the womb and for the feminine in general. The reward on that for you holding that sacred space for the feminine is that energy is collected in the field. And then what comes out is fluid and it needs to move. It needs to not be backed up. It was produced down into those areas to be moved out. And like I said, if you want to start building the practice towards cultivating, being able to try to pull, you can see I've practiced for over 20 years. I can do that. This is the part that's challenging. I can do and move that fluid, and it's a whole process that takes about 30 minutes to an hour after you have your union experience, okay? You're not doing that, so it's fine. Don't jam up your system. Don't steal the tiger's purse because you're missing the energetic side because you're so materialistic and you don't even realize it, even thinking you're being spiritual. Materialistic. What matters, right? Move the energy. Move the fluid. Contain and generate the energy. This is a big one. Many of us Taoist practitioners are trying to always talk about this because it's such a detrimental misteaching for the masculine. And with the good intention of thinking they're doing something that makes sense. Oh yeah, I don't want to waste this. Yeah, well, you're not wasting it. That's the thing. You produce it. You produce this fluid. You produce it. And guess what? You'll produce more of it if you contain the energy and you don't just waste it. Okay? But if you let it come out, and I'm talking within anywhere under 30 minutes, even longer, you're not absorbing the energy. So it is a good majority of that chi is going to come out through the fluid because it hasn't been held and contained in the field. I know that makes sense. I hope it makes sense to the holistic side of truth to you all because you don't have to convince somebody about holistic truth. It just is what it is. Here is just one example, ladies, of practices that you can do for elemental breathing, circulating the prana, practicing your microcosmic orbit, practicing moving and activating the heart, integrating yourself back into your body. And this brings us to, this is a really old Taoist sexual practitioner's manual that we're just going to read a little bit of, and I'm going to show you some of the diagrams that you can see for diagnosis. So let's take a look. The next two chapters stress the efficacy of certain positions in sexual intercourse for curing many kinds of ailments. The passage reads like a medical prescription in which the penis is the curative agent for the number and manner of its insertions are specifically prescribed. If the instructions are followed to the letter, the text states that in 10 or 20 days, a cure will be effected. One position enables the man to hold fast to his semen and checks undue loss of blood by the woman. Another harmonizes the man's life force and cures coldness in the woman's yoni. The magic number of penetrations is usually 9 and an odd number associated with the male element and the number of the greatest potency under 10. Sex by the numbers. Supply further benefits to the practitioner. It strengthens the bones, profits the veins, enhances the fluids, invigorates the male, and cures odoriferousness of the vagina. The practice, as advised, however, would be impractical for anyone gainfully employed. A typical instruction is to carry out the intercourse in the prescribed way 9 times daily for 9 days. Another indication that the text was compiled primarily for members of the leisure class. So you can see a lot of these sciences they were cultivated for the upper class. In fact, the emperors were usually trained by female practitioners that were trained in the Taoist arts, and because they wanted to be the ultimate lovers, and they wanted to also be able to have healthy seed to be able to produce heirs and things, and so they would be brought in. How do you release after 30 minutes? Well, you just, after the 30 minutes of building and conjuring the energy, you should sync one of your 9-pound thrust techniques. By the way, that's the one we talked about in the Tao. 8 shallow thrusts. On the 9th one, you go deep, you hold, you pull the energy back. So after 30 minutes, then because she's going to be progressively building with each one of those 9-pound thrusts. And so eventually on one of those cycles, after holding, and you will feel that energy and that chi is contained in the field. You will feel it collectively contained between you. Then, as the timing and the breath and the synchronicity are right, you're going to allow yourself to fully release with her, simultaneously conjuring and building both her energy and yours into this collective field that is shared, that will charge you throughout the day. And you will feel that. You will feel a contained charge within the field throughout the entire day. It's not going to be something where you're charged and then it tapers off, or you're feeling extremely exhausted. That depends on you. How often is a good question. How often is it okay for males to release their seed? Well, you know what? You're going to find a natural regulation to that process that will naturally happen for you. And every male is different. That's why I can't really generalize it. But I can tell you that some of us have more sexual energy than others do. In human design, there's a whole thing for that. There's 75% of the world are generators, and the other 25% don't have that sacral definition. So they're here to more learn about sexuality. Generally, generators, that's what we do. We generate energy. So in regards to, you're going to have your own regulation to it. When I'm in a process of intimacy, and I hold and I build and I conjure that charge and absorb the energy in my field and then move the fluid, I have a natural restoration cycle that's my own pace that I have, that I can double up on, I can build on if I want to. Because here's the thing, once that initial load of that fluid is released, from there, if you're having more advanced, let's say tantric lovemaking, where you're multiple times a day, or multiple times within a period of days, the body's naturally going, you won't have even fluid really. Even when you hold and you build that energy, there's not even really anything to move through until that supply replenishes itself. And so the body naturally is not, again, it's on its own cycle. It's on its own schedule. You're just building the energy charge from it. Naturally, the fluid will naturally not have the same restoration load, and you won't have the same pressure to move that fluid. So you'll naturally go into a seminal retention process normally. It naturally already happens for the body itself, especially if you're practicing these cultivation exercises where you're actually building the chi and you're containing that chi in the body. You'll naturally notice less of a pressure from the fluid to even want to leave the lingam past this. And you'll start having these more internal orgasms that are no longer based on the seminal fluid releasing. But notice it's regulating into a seminal retention without forcing the fluid to stay in. You don't force anything. It's a big thing. Western culture, we force stuff, Wow. Okay. Satguru, going with some crazy comments today. Celibate yogi versus retard. Yeah, I'm not really sure what the intention is behind these. I'm going to leave them up. I'm not going to take them down if that's how you want to represent. And I'm not really sure the overall gist of what you're trying to express here to our little group. But yes, celibacy is a beautiful thing. The body naturally goes into states of celibacy in its own right. And like I said, naturally, besides moving your fluid, your body will go into its own place of. But yeah, I've had years of celibacy through the yogic sciences and the practices. And, it's a beautiful thing in and of itself. And it's equally just as beautiful to conjure and embody these deeper activations of the sexual energy. So, it's not, I'm not extremely polarized to one or the other. I'm sharing with you all the more conscious way, if you choose to step into this sacred divine union realm, to be able to do it. And it's not, again, the alternative to celibacy should be with deep honor and reverence. Yeah, you can't. It's weird. Anyways, I'm not really sure. It's usually very productive in these. So, nonetheless, typical instruction is to carry out intercourse in prescribed way. And that's the thing. So let's take a look at some of these. Causes the male to firm up the semen. Also to cure blood leakage of the woman. If this is carried out twice a day, she will be cured in 15 days. So it shows you a specific position. And then, of course, you apply all of the Taoist cultivation techniques to the lovemaking in terms of the technical thrusts and how to build the energy together to conjure that energy. And in the Tao, it's looked at as for the feminine, the yoni is a short sword and a shield. This is metaphorically how they look at it, like we're in battle together. And that's how the Tao actually approaches, like it's a martial art. So the feminine has a shield and a short dagger that is the yoni and the clitoris, and the masculine has a long sword represented to the lingam. And the metaphoric strategy is, if the masculine comes in swinging aggressively, the feminine deflects, the masculine gets exhausted, and then boom, she shanks him, so to speak. Okay. And that actually the masculine has to not come in swinging aggressively through the aspect of interaction and connectedness that actually causes an imbalance in it. Another metaphor they use is that the feminine is water, the masculine is fire. If you just throw fire in the water, then the fire goes out. But if you heat the water and then throw the fire in, it creates steam. It creates this alchemical change. And that the masculine has an extra role to play to be able to try to meet and match the feminine, which is considered through the Tao as the more powerful sex energy and is honored and respected as such, and not to approach in battle, so to speak, is not to approach in battle with this strategy, because it is flawed and it will cause, the masculine's demise. And it's very much true. If you come in swinging, the masculine doesn't hold, the masculine doesn't contain the energy and work within the exchange, besides coming in and abrasively swinging the long sword, then they get exhausted. That's represented by the fluid just releasing along with the energy, boom, out of the body. And again, this is also where there is a great stigma for, and even dogma in the spiritual communities around celibacy, and that somehow it's some higher path. I don't really see how that doesn't fit to the holistic truth of how your body works, the energy field of the kundalini and whatnot. Can you move sexual energy and transmute it and not have to be intimate with anybody? 100%. We've talked about all these practices can be done sovereignly, just like the breath pressurizations that we take you through each week and how you can do this. This is taking it to another level, a scary level. That's right. It's outside of the sovereignty, which very much, whether I want to say it's the monks or the yogis, I see a great aversion. They don't trust themselves with this energy. It's too powerful. That's the way they look at it. It's too powerful. I don't want to go into that whole, somehow it's too much. They don't trust themselves with that energy. And that feels like a more inferior state that is going again against the natural divine union that spirit has created for us with all the magical, deeper mechanics we've identified today. And it feels like a cop-out to me, to be quite honest with you. And it feels like, and again, I've loved my years of celibacy that I've gone through, and they've been powerful and beautiful. And at the same time, I also noticed, despite the exercises, the practices, that there was a depletion energetically from the things that I was not activating and utilizing in my mechanics. And so that's fine. If you want to be celibate and just go on that path, that's totally awesome. You better do your practices. And even when you do, you will see a natural depletion of your sex center because God's going, you're just not using it. So what happens for the penis if it's not used, despite your practices? You lose both length and girth because it goes, oh, we're not using this. Let's put the energy somewhere else. So the lingam atrophies. And the same thing happens with the vaginal canal and the yoni, is the vaginal canal atrophies and it shrinks up. And because it's not being used. Now, to me, that would be like not using one of the most profound aspects of the technology that God gave me. And so for myself, that's not, I choose not to do that. I take bouts of celibacy and they're beautiful. And it's kind of like intermittent fasting for myself anyways, because my body tells me, this is beautiful. This has been the most powerful experience, and there will be a natural regulation process where my body will want to invoke that activation and that sacred union again. And again, as tantric practitioners, obviously everyone has different levels of sexual energy. So for those of us that actually have more sexual energy, we generally do come into fields where we're maybe teaching or working with these energies. And for everyone else, you're going to regulate to where you're at, and that's beautiful. And everyone gets to have that. So let's just continue on because we're going to close this out soon. The second benefit is called the tranquilizing life force. These are all just different poses, and you can see it just like it says. It describes the pose, and then it says it causes the man's life force to be harmonized, also to cure coldness in the woman's jade gate. I like how they refer to that. And they have very noble names for our sacred areas too, by the way. If this is carried out 3 times daily, she will be cured in 20 days. So you can see how there's just a bunch of them, and they're beautiful. And it's so interesting how they speak with such conviction around this. Further, to cure an obstruction of the woman's blood, done 5 times a day, she'll be cured in 10 days. So it's just, I think it's a fascinating thing for you to even see this. And really look at because this should be an abstraction that's outside of your indoctrinated idea of sexuality anyways, to see, oh my gosh, wait, what? You do this 6 times a day daily, and then she'll be cured in 20 days? Wow, okay. What a powerful way to look at using sexuality to heal the body. And from a very advanced and ancient culture that was very meticulous about detail and about the science of things, and very noble in the respect even of how they address the sacred centers, which we just don't have the same in the West. So ultimately, here's one. The 8 benefits is called informing the body. Have women lie straight out, bend her thighs, and forcing her legs under her buttocks. Okay, so this looks like celibate pose, basically, in the yogic sciences. The man makes use of his thighs and ribs and stabs and okay, remember, they look at this as martial arts, and stabs her. So he says that. We use another verb, maybe. He thereby carries out a count of 9 nines, so that's the 9-pound thrust, and stops when the count is complete. It causes the man's bones to be fulfilled, further to cure an odoriferousness of the woman's yoni. If this is done 9 times a day, she'll be cured in 9 days. So, look at this one. Wow. Impressive. The dog of early, mid, and late autumn. That's the name of this pose and this treatment. Yeah, baby. This chat is fire. This has been a fire show. I'm so grateful to be doing this with you guys. Really, really. And again, thank you to Harry, who had another guest on, because it was going to be at the same time our show was. And so Spirit was just like, why don't you? I've been deeply inspired by some amazing reflections of consciousness in my life, and deriving that I need to get this manual finished for this this ancient neuromuscular work, and it's happening. I'm writing it now, and so it was an inspiration to dive into and look at the base templates of Tantra and the Tao, and these origin systems from these advanced cultures that we want to honor, and really look at the treasures of these systems that really have been kept from us and overall lost. I mean, even this book was extremely hard to acquire. Let's see, what was I going to say? You can see again from these, they're all like very much specific in how, listen how he said, the man inserts his jade stalk into her womb. It's very noble. I'm sorry, but we don't talk like that the same way. This position would have been impossible to achieve on a low bed, customarily used by the Tang Chinese and the Heian Japanese, because this wasn't just the Chinese culture. The Japanese were also practicing, and it's depicted through the art and the cultures throughout the East and Indo-Asian culture as well, because again, they had another respect and depth for the science of our bodies, for us being reflections of our divinity, and really an intention and an awareness that this is the highest form that they could strive to achieve, to truly honor this sacred act. So sexual energy is a wastage if it remains only confined to sex, but it becomes a great blessing if it starts transforming its quality. Enter into sex not for sex sake. Use sex as a communion of love. Use sex as a meeting of two souls, not only of two bodies. Use sex as a meditative dance of two persons' energies. The dance is far richer when men and women are dancing together, and the sex is the ultimate in dance. Two energies meeting, merging, dancing, rejoicing, and let's throw in healing. When you bring healing into your intimacy, you're bringing an energy that it is a Christed energy. It is the most healing energy, is healing. It is one of the most Christed acts you can do is take your own energy and use it with your free will to help somebody else heal. To not focus on yourself, but to help somebody else heal. Obviously, it's a powerful thing to take that healing energy and focus on healing yourself too. But it's another thing to put another over yourself for that healing. And that energy comes into that union when you bring it in, when you choose to honor what the true nature of our divinity is. And there are the most divine cosmic rewards that come on the other end of that selflessness, to bring in more than your self-centered, indoctrinated perspective that's very controlled and limited around sexuality. And I hope that we challenge that for you guys today, and bringing more of an awareness to the divinity of what it is for us to come together, and what's been so deeply under attack, and the inversions and polarity in our psyches, our psychophysical constitute from the masculine and the feminine being inverted. How can we reach this polarity if we're so inverted, really? True. Healing is the most important topic, and that's also because so many of us have an association to trauma around sexuality. Even if it was you being a little kid and you were just touching yourself because that's what little kids do, and your parents came in and went, "What are you doing? Don't do that." Trauma, just from that. I remember those things. And so with my kids, and I remember my youngest daughter, who's 15 now, is going to be angry at me for saying this, but I used to come in the room and, she'd be playing around down there, playing a dong and ding dong. And only thing I would say, because I broke these patterns, was, "Oh, are your hands clean?" "Hey, oh, are your hands clean?" Because you don't, and that was breaking that cycle, because we don't realize how we've accumulated that trauma, the shame, the guilt, because it's passed down. It's not just from the collective society indoctrination, it's familial. And everyone has, unfortunately, sexual compromises and trauma in the familial dynamic, because that's what happens when you repress, suppress, and oppress. Our greatest power in a collective consciousness is it tries to rebel, and it comes out in distorted ways. So, on that note, it's ultimately, again, for us to reach our true divinity, the magic of what we truly are, that we can embody within ourselves. And the most powerful thing through that sovereignty is to face another in that self-reflected awareness, and be able to converge in the most divine reflected form of our heightened divinity, connected to each other, fully present in that divine awakening and bliss. That's our show. Appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a journey. 100%. Healing the mind, healing the body. Remember, the body is the slowpoke, right? Okay. Consciousness moves at light speed, but it's the body that holds the trauma. That's why we try to focus on you learning to heal thyself. Release your body. Just give your whole body a squeeze every day. Just before you go to bed at night, just give it a squeeze. Think about it as a water vessel or like a soy sauce packet. And you got to move that soy sauce around in there or push it out the end because it drains. That's how your muscles look. They look like little packets. I love you too, brethren. Truly, thanks for joining me on here. You guys make the show for me. Truly, we got 17 watching. 17, the sacred number in the Bible. Q, it represents the divine. It is what it is. We got our show tomorrow at Monday. We'll be streaming on People for People Radio on the radio, as well as on Rumble, eventually going over to Brighteon. You can check out more. There's all kinds of stuff for you to activate and empower yourself on this YouTube channel besides our lives that we do. Go dig back in there and check out more about how you can have a deeper understanding of yourself, your body, your divine technology. It's ultimately what it's all about. Please share the movie release if you get a chance with people. It's also about the same thing and the power of touch and all that trauma and emotional trauma that we hold in the body that needs to be released. Ultimately, to get back to our own divinity, right? This is what it's all about right here. Because ultimately, this is where we started at. And this is partly also what it's about getting back to with Tantra, with another person reflected in that place of divine innocence and playfulness and purity, free from all the indoctrination. It's a beautiful place to be. You can be free. So yes, on that note, Micah Sky, Release Sundays Live. Always truly an honor and pleasure, especially to share such a sacred topic with you all. Again, here's the film. If you get a chance, releasethemovie.com. You can check it out. The uncensored version's there. I'm going to dive back in today to working on part 2 to be released next month for you guys. I'm very excited about it. It's a journey of love, truly, for me to do, and blessings with 4 kids to find time to somehow edit and produce a film on my own, let alone 2 in 1 year. So, but it's happening, and it needs to come out. It needs to be released. And yeah, so that's our show. I appreciate you guys so much. Let's bring our container to close, if you will, with just a little something. Just a little music, maybe. It's just always a pleasure, truly, always. And it's a completion for me to share this knowledge and wisdom with you all, and your receptivity for you to share it with each other. And you guys got some awesome, should be really exciting, fun homework for you guys to play with, especially if you have a partner to play with, to explore and challenge yourselves into some new places and spaces. Remember, Montauk Chia, Cultivating Sexual Energy for Men, Cultivating Sexual Energy for Women. That's a beautiful start for you to start exploring with. There's some other amazing books. Happy to drop in the chat room for you guys if you're interested. Like, for instance, Egyptian Tantra has a whole other branch of unique practices that are very interesting to see. And again, kind of predating the Hindu culture in terms of the influx of occult knowledge and wisdom, especially around the sacred sexual sciences, ultimately all stemming back to antediluvian civilizations far long ago that have been lost and are coming back to the forefront now, along with all of the knowledge and wisdom with which those civilizations existed. It's coming out. We're in it. It's the Bronze Age. It's the time for it. So thank you for playing your part, playing a role in this with me. Truly. Aloha. Satnam.